Hello, Earthlings. Welcome back to another episode of Tooth and Claw Podcast. We have our bear biologist, Wes Larson. He's doing great. He's just in Montana.
Negative 10 degrees, baby, in my shed.
Nice.
Oh,
Yeah, it's getting the full test today.
Getting small. You know what I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah. Already there, dude.
That's your first thought. Then we got our producer, Mike Smith.
Hey.
And then I'm Jeff Larson, Wes's little brother, and I've kind of messed around with bears a little bit, but not to the degree Wes has.
You've probably messed around with them more than I have, actually.
I wouldn't say that.
Yeah. Jeff, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
How the fuck are you, man? How you doing?
Oh, dude.
All right. Skip 10 minutes ahead for anyone
Okay.
listening.
No, I don't know. I'm doing all right. Doing as good as you can, you know? Excited to go to India soon. I think my brain might be broken.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't know things anymore. I thought I knew things, and now I feel like I don't know any things at all.
World's all
Oh, no.
topsy-turvy.
Yeah, I just, you can tell me anything right now and be like, yeah, maybe you're right, you know?
You should,
Wow. We
you
gotta
should
take
maybe get
advantage
that
of
checked
Mike.
out. So
Yeah.
yeah, we do. We really ought to. I watched a YouTube video recently about a guy who got diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's. Important. Go get checked out if you think you're actually struggling. I guess that goes for you too, Jeff, if you think you are. But he had such a positive outlook on life. And I was like, dude, this guy just got maybe the worst diagnosis you could ever get. He was like 38, not much older than me. And he's like 1,000 times happier than me. What's going on?
It's crazy.
Those guys,
Like,
those people are just amazing.
Those people are the best. Those are the people that need to be making decisions for like countries and peoples and stuff.
Right.
Because
I mean, we had one in there in the office in America.
Biden?
Yeah.
He's gone now.
Yeah.
That was
Early
late.
Alzheimer's.
Late onset.
Late onset. That's a good point. No, I
Forgot how to ride a bike.
I twisted my ankle the other day.
You
and I
never
was kinda
forget
just
how to
like-
ride a bike. Sorry.
I twisted my ankle the other day. I was just like, maybe I should kill myself. You know?
Oh man, it's tough out there.
No,
That's
I'm
how
just
I
kidding.
feel whenever the NFL season's over. Oh, man, 200 more days.
All right. We got a long story today. So I'm just going to get us started here. I'm going to get us going.
Let's go.
Yeah. You know, when we decided to go weekly, which we'll see how long that sticks. I think like in my head, the first thing that was scary was like, oh man, we're going to burn through so much stuff. It's going to be hard to find like really good stories. And more I learned that, you know, people are out there creating content for us all the time.
Thank you for your service.
Part of what I,
Yeah.
thank you. Yeah, we appreciate it.
And if you're listening and you haven't been attacked by an animal yet,
Get on it.
throw us a bone.
Don't actually. That's actually antithetical to the purpose of this podcast. But what I was trying to get at was that I kind of, and we all three talked about this. This wasn't just me. We kind of want to experiment with some different formats. We did the Revenant review, and today is somewhat different too, in that it's a really good story, but it's not one that necessarily centers around wildlife, even though there is wildlife in this story. It's more of just a crazy story that happened to someone. It is nature focused. So just so you know, it's a little bit different, but I'm really excited for it. It's one that I really put a ton of time into, and I'm excited to tell.
We'll give you
You guys
5
ready?
minutes to hook us. Otherwise, I'm cutting the recording short.
All right. Well, here's that. This is the story of the girl that fell from the sky, the story of Juliane Kopke, and it's a crazy one. So we'll get ready for it. Put on that air seat or airplane buckle, seatbelt, whatever. You know what I'm
All
saying.
right. Sure.
Okay.
I didn't know
You don't.
what you were
No,
saying,
it's
yeah.
fine. All right.
Just
So the
seatbelt.
sources for today are the book When I Fell from the Sky, which is Juliane Kopke's autobiography, Wings of Hope, which is a Werner Herzog documentary. We're back on Werner, which I love. Was happy to watch his documentary on this. And then a bunch of articles. And I've kind of learned that when I do these ones, I end up reading their book twice, because I read it once to kind of know what I want to include, and then I have to read it again to actually write my story out. So I feel very close to the story now, and I'm excited about it. Okay.
That's what I had to
Seven-
do with Hunger Games.
Yeah. You had to read it and then watch it and then read it again.
Yeah, I was like, wait.
To understand what you read and then
are
what you watched.
Tracker jackers again?
Yeah. You feel very close to Hunger Games.
Yeah.
17-year-old Juliane Kopke is in shock. It's Christmas Eve, 1971. The plane she's in just got hit by lightning. And from her seat at the back of the plane, she can see all the way down into the cabin and into the cockpit as this plane is plummeting toward the earth.
Wow.
Everyone's screaming. Suitcases, Christmas presents are falling out of the overhead compartment. She hears her mother calmly say, "Now it's all over." Over the deafening sound of all these screams, the turbines, everything. And then suddenly, her world is a lot quieter. Now, all she can hear is the sound of rushing wind. She's still strapped to her seat by her seatbelt, but she's left the plane, or the plane has left her. She's spinning freely through the air in her seat. The rest of the plane is completely gone. This overwhelming green of the Peruvian Amazon is rushing up to greet her and seal her fate. She turns to the camera and says, "Now you might be wondering how I got here." That last part maybe didn't happen.
I feel like people are going to like rewind a bunch right there. They're going to be like, wait a second, why am I in the middle of this story?
All right, so we actually are going to rewind, Jeff. I'm glad you said that. And we're going to go back to the beginning of Juliane's life, because it is kind of crazy to learn how she got to this place. And what's much crazier is what happens afterward. So she was born in Lima, Peru in October of 1954 to German parents, both of whom were zoologists working in Peru, and their names were Maria and Hans William Kopke. They're both pretty famous people in the scientific community. Maria was a really accomplished ornithologist by the end of her life, and Hans Wilhelm did a lot of work on both ornithology, herpetology, so that's birds and reptiles, plus just general zoology. These are very accomplished scientists. Hans Wilhelm got his doctorate in 1947 in Germany and immediately began looking for countries with high amounts of biodiversity to do his studies.
What's going on in Germany in the 1940s?
Yeah.
What do you think a couple of German expats are doing in South America?
In South America. We're not gonna cast any judgment. Okay. We would if we knew anything about these people. I had that same thought, Mike, when I read this. These are Germans that immigrated to South America directly after the war. But I did a really thorough search to see if there was a nefarious reason for that. I couldn't find anything.
Yeah.
But I couldn't find anything really about their lives up until this point either. So we're just going to let people kind of do their own research there. All right. I genuinely think that they wanted to go to Peru because of the biodiversity, not because of asylum or anything. I really do.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of German people who Germany was a tough place to be in then. And,
yeah, they left.
Okay. So he got his doctorate in 1947 and he settled on Peru for a place that he wanted to work. And he just wrote a letter to the university in Lima and their natural history museum and said, "Hey, I'm German. I have this doctorate. I want to come work there." And they were like, "Sure. Yeah, come on over." Nice. This ended up being really hard to do that. He was already engaged to Maria, or they were dating and serious. She was going to follow him once he got over there, but he didn't have a passport or a visa. Apparently, after the war in Germany, no one really had a legal way to leave the country. So what he ended up doing was hearing that he could go to Italy and get a boat from Italy. So he hitchhiked to the Italian border. He crawled over the fence, got hurt, and then ended up recovering and crawling under the fence. Got to Genoa, Italy, just missed his boat. So then he went to Rome. He got a Red Cross passport, but was told that he would have to wait weeks or even months for passage to South America, which he didn't want to do. So he heard maybe I should go to Naples. He went up to Naples, and there he got thrown into a prison camp.
Whoa.
In the prison camp, he prayed and prayed and prayed that he could get out somehow. And one night it rained so hard that the walls of this camp literally crumbled. He escaped hid in a
no way.
Yeah, he hid in a bush for 24 hours. And then he spent a while longer in Italy, just kind of like staying in farmhouses and stuff and working for food. But then he finally was like, I got to get out of Italy. This isn't working. So he headed to France. And once he got to France, they were like, the country's full of minefields. Don't even try hiking through France. But he's like, I'm going to hike through France, which he did. He hiked all the way to Nice and Provence.
Nice.
And honestly, like this goes on and on and on.
No, it's
he
Nice.
Gets thrown in.
That's right. You just said that.
Yeah. He gets thrown in prison more. He gets robbed. All of this stuff happens. But finally, in Spain, he's able to sneak onto a cargo ship that's carrying a ton of salt to South America, and he literally burrows into salt with another guy, and that's their plan, to
No
like
way.
spend weeks in this salt container.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's crazy.
Preserved.
Yeah.
He could live forever.
After 3 days, the salt has absorbed into their skin. They can hardly breathe. They're just miserable. And the other guy is like, "Hey, I'm done. I'm going to let the ship know that we're down here." And he's like, "No, just wait longer. Wait until they can't turn around." And the guy's like, "No, I'm over this." So he tells them that they're in there. And they get thrown into prison in the Canary Islands. But then he manages to get out and get passage to Brazil. Once he's in Brazil, he literally hikes across Brazil 3,000 miles to get to Peru.
Dude.
So he finally gets to Peru 2 years after they said,
Yeah, they're like,
this
"You're
job
late."
is yours. Yeah. So he shows up at the museum and he says, "Hey, I'm here." And they're like, "Oh, this job's been filled for like a year, you know?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he has to just kind of take whatever jobs. Maria manages to get over to Lima finally. They're
Does
married.
she like do the same path?
No,
Yeah.
I think she
Crawl
has a
over
pretty
that
easy
fence.
path by then. They're married and they have Juliane in 1954. They do end up working for the Natural History Museum in Peru, and they spend a lot of their time in the Amazon. And while they're in the Amazon, they bring little Juliane over, and she gets to spend a lot of her childhood in the Amazon, like raising wild animals, just having a really incredible childhood. And her parents teach her a lot about the natural world, about surviving in the jungle, about all these different things that you have to learn if you're spending a lot of time in the Amazon. All right, so she's kind of growing up there, and the Peruvian government gets wind of that, and they're like, "Hey, she needs to actually go to school." So they send her to high school in Lima, and she learns German, she learns English, she learns Spanish. She really likes high school in Lima. She
What
makes a lot of
language did
friends
she
there.
grow up speaking?
I think she grew up speaking German, and then she learned English and Spanish.
Oh, okay.
I think she probably grew up speaking German and Spanish, actually.
Because you
was
said
raised
she
in
learned
Peru.
German in school.
Yeah, sorry.
Sometimes people
I
do that,
misspoke
though. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, like we had to
Yeah.
learn. We had to go to English class.
Yeah. I majored in English in college, and I still suck at it. What's that all about?
You know who sucks at it is freaking my iPhone, dude.
Oh,
It's
your
like
gosh.
change words that are like real words when I'm like hitting send on my text.
Yeah, mine always changes wheel to well, and that drives me up the wall.
Yeah,
it's
it's
like,
just
this
like-
is a word that I use every day. Yeah. All right. So during this time, her parents actually establish a research station in the Peruvian Amazon, and they name it Penguana. And her mom, who's primarily an ornithologist, so birds, and her dad, who's doing all this general kind of zoology, they spend a lot of time at the station. They're pretty much living there for a good part of the year. And their hope is that this little preserve that's like a few hundred acres will grow to be this huge conservation area where a lot of research is done, which is a really noble pursuit. So in December 1971, Juliane is 17. She's about to graduate, and there's some really fun ceremonies that she wants to do at her school. And her mom, Maria, is in Lima to pick her up and take her to Penguana in the Amazon. And their plan is to leave on like the 22nd or 23rd to kind of skip the Christmas Eve rush to get home. And Juliane says, "You know what, Mom? There's all these fun ceremonies for graduation that I want to do. I really want to do all that. It's important to me." And her mom understands, and she really pushes her mom. And her mom finally says, "Fine, we can leave on Christmas Eve." That's something that Juliane, her entire life, would regret and kind of feel guilty for. When they get to the airport on the 24th in Lima, it's absolutely packed with people trying to get home for Christmas, and all of the flights are either sold out or selling out quickly. And they managed to get a spot on Lansa Airlines, LANSA, Flight 508. And they call their dad, Hans Wilhelm, and their husband, to let him know that they're coming. And he says, "Do not get on that flight.
Oh,
Do
wow.
not fly Lansa Airlines. It's not worth it." There's a reason for that. Lansa Airlines started in 1963, and during that time they were operating, they had 19 different planes. In 1971, when Juliane and Maria were about to get on this flight, Lansa had one operating plane left.
Oh.
And that's because all of their planes in this like less than 10 years had either crashed or been grounded because they were not able to fly anymore.
Yeah,
the
but
first
this
crash
is
is
their like good plane. Then
This
is
is
the
their
one
good one.
that's like
This one's run
made
the
it
gamut.
through all of that.
That's not a terrible way to look at it, but it actually is.
It's pretty
I think it
dumb
might
what's gonna
actually
happen.
be a pretty bad way.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of funny because I think I love flying and I've never had a fear of flying. Jessie does. And I kind of always have to give her pep talks as we're going to the airport and stuff. And Mike, I know you have like a semi fear of flying.
Yeah, 10%. Yeah.
It's like a recent experience that kind of gave it to you.
Yeah,
though,
we did
right?
like a barrel roll coming into the tarmac once. It was insane.
And that
There was,
does
like, everyone
happen.
was screaming.
That kind of stuff can really alter your feelings about it. Like Julianne's mom had a really scary thing happen to her when she was flying to the United States. So she's not excited about flying on this day. To me, it seems like taking this flight, you have like a pretty good chance of crashing. And the reason for that is that the first crash that they had was in 1966, and it was LANSA Flight 501, and they just crashed into the side of a mountain like 10 minutes after takeoff. All 49 people on board were killed.
Mountains are pretty huge.
They are big.
Be
They're a
hard
big target
to avoid
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
I think people do it pretty regularly. They manage to avoid these mountains. This next crash was in 1970 when LANSA Flight 502 crashed outside of Cuzco, Peru. When one of the engines stopped working, 99 out of 100 people on board died, and 2 people on the ground were killed.
A llama got sucked into the engine, probably.
It could have been Cuzco. Lots of llamas around there. Actually, that's not what happened.
It's Emperor's New Groove
Yeah,
joke.
He was a
right?
llama, right?
Yeah.
That's
he was a
kinda what-
llama.
Okay,
Yeah.
there you go.
All right. LANSA was famous in Peru for being a really unreliable airline. People joked about how their planes were always belly up. They discovered that some of the repairs that were done on the airplanes had been done by motorcycle mechanics, and some of their pilots never even completed their training before they were put in the air.
That's
So this
insane.
is like a nightmare airline. This doesn't happen anymore, at least not that I know of.
I thought you
Okay.
were going to say they hadn't completed their training because they crashed before they
Died.
could. Yeah, crashed and died
Well,
before they could.
It's crazy too because other airlines have such a high standard of care and like being
Yeah.
ultra safe. So
Yeah.
then like you attribute that to just all the planes that you're getting on, you know?
Totally. And what I think had happened with this airline is ownership had kind of switched hands a few times. And when that happened, they kind of slipped under the radar of some of these safety protocols and stuff
Yeah.
because of this reorganization. So for whatever reason, they were able to get away with this for a while.
It's like the Dallas Mavericks. They switch
Yeah.
ownership and just like
They can
get
do
rid
whatever
of
they
their
want.
best player for someone who gets hurt in their first game.
I wonder what their on-flight attendants were like, if they were good at their jobs or if they also sucked.
They're all just wearing like
spilling peanuts all
flak
over
jackets.
you and stuff.
And they all have parachutes on. Today's episode is brought to you by Ollie. Clean, fresh nutrition your dog needs in 5 flavors they'll absolutely flip over. You don't have to be a veterinary nutritionist to know that feeding your dog real whole foods with minimal processing is one of the best choices you can make for their health. I totally agree with this. With Bryce, we were really careful about giving her really natural, good food, and we're doing the same with Polly. Because I do think, dogs, the terrible thing about dogs is they don't live that long. So anything you can do to extend that life and make your dog happier is really important. And with absolutely no harmful fillers, no preservatives, Ollie is made in U.S. kitchens with ingredients that are carefully sourced from trusted growers and producers around the world. So you're giving your dog really good food and food that they're going to like. They have 5 protein-first recipes like fresh beef with sweet potatoes, fresh turkey with blueberries, or fresh lamb with cranberries, which all sounds really good to me. It sounds like a Thanksgiving feast for your dog. Jeff, you're drooling right now, just hearing about this food. I can see it.
Yeah.
So really all you have to do is fill out their 30-second quiz. They create a meal plan for you. You'll get expert recommendations. You can put together your starter box and customize your plan. It's really simple, and they can put together a plan that's perfect for your budget and your dog. So give your pup a fresh start this new year by letting them taste a personalized meal plan with Ollie. Head to ollie.com/tooth, tell them all about your dog, and use code TOOTH to get 60% off your first box of meals when you subscribe today. Plus, they offer a clean bowl guarantee on the first box. So if you're not completely satisfied, you'll get your money back. That's OLLIE.com/tooth and enter code TOOTH to get 60% off your first box. Start your dog's new year off right with Ollie. So Juliane and Maria are pretty nervous when they talk to Hans Wilhelm, and then they see their plane. And their plane actually looks really good. It's a pretty new looking Lockheed L188A Electra turboprop, and they feel a lot of confidence. Jeff, you know a lot about planes.
I know the sound of those more than the look, but those are good sounding planes.
When one flies over, you're always like, oh, that's a Lockheed turboprop. Yeah.
17.8 gigatons of torque. Or whatever.
Billion like horsepower.
So they decide to get on this plane. And what they didn't know was that this particular plane was actually built in the US specifically for travel over the desert. It's not really built for the kind of turbulence that you often encounter in the mountains. And luckily, they're just flying over the Andes, which, the Andes aren't much when it comes to mountains.
I mean, air is air, though, right? You're just in the air.
Yeah, that's not true. Not true at all. I flew once from Santiago, Chile up to Ecuador, and you fly over the Andes and then the Amazon, and it is just really stark how much it changes, both in the bumpiness of the flight and just the terrain when you're crossing the Andes and then you get over the Amazon basin. It's a really cool flight. Kind of a funny aside here. At the time, Werner Herzog was filming the film Aguirre, Wrath of God, which is a crazy film, a crazy story. And he was actually in the airport that same day, and he was trying to get on Lanza Flight 508, but couldn't get a ticket for him and his flight crew.
No way.
And he was really pissed about it. Like, he threw a little fit in the airport because they couldn't get on this flight. And the fact that not getting on that flight spared his life is part of the reason he was so interested in Juliane's story and ended up filming a documentary about it.
That's crazy. It's like Jackie Chan was supposed to be on the Twin Towers on 9/11.
Really?
Is that true?
He's supposed to be in the towers or on the flight?
I always heard that you're supposed to do like a stunt on top of the towers.
That would have been a bad day for that. Could have been a cool stunt, though.
Amazing. Yeah. He would have lived through it
if he pulled it off.
Yeah.
Like runs
That's
across
irreverent.
the top
I
of the
probably
plane.
shouldn't say that.
Yeah.
No, it's an interesting thought, though. I'm trying to figure out what he would have done.
It is interesting, too, that Herzog was in, another German born in South America. I'm not saying anything.
Yeah, this feels different in the 70s when he's there to film a movie about
I'll
Peru.
just say, too, before the correction corner, I bet the Jackie Chan thing is, like, wrong, but it's, like, been said a lot.
Right now, there's someone that's about to type an angry message to you, Jeff. Shoot.
I did hear Jimmy Kimmel was supposed to be on a flight. I don't know. There's a million rumors. I'm sure they're all probably false.
It's too bad Mark Wahlberg wasn't on.
He would have stopped that shit. Yeah. All right, so these two do get on the plane, and they do take off. Unfortunately, Marky Mark is not on the plane with them. Juliane and her mom are in row 19, second to last row from the back, and Juliane's in 19F by the window. Her mom's in the middle, and a man she describes as an overweight Peruvian man is sleeping in the aisle. Not in the aisle, in the aisle seat.
Yeah.
So the flight's really bumpy. And like I mentioned, Maria doesn't really like flying because she's already had a scare before. But it's not bumpier than normal for flying over the Andes and into the Amazon basin. And the first 40 minutes of this flight are pretty normal. And then they hit a big storm front. And I probably should have done this kind of trigger warning at the beginning, but we are going to talk about some scary flight stuff. So if you have like an intense fear of flying, you might just want to skip this part. But it's really interesting. So they hit this storm front, and the pilot at this point has two choices. He can either divert and add some time to their route and go around this storm, or he can just plow through it. And every other plane that day was diverting around this storm, but because Lancet had some canceled flights and because people were behind, he just was like, I need to keep to my schedule. We're just going to push through this storm.
Send it.
Yeah, which I listened to an aviation podcast about this story. And the guy that's an aviation expert says this is called get there-itis, which is a really bad thing that pilots do sometimes, where they don't really do it anymore, but back in the day, they would take risks. Now there's so many people in their ear telling them what to do that they can't really do this anymore, which is good. This guy made the point that every time something terrible happens on a plane, it makes flying safer for people, which is true. So he goes into this storm. It gets really dark in the cabin, and Juliane remembers seeing pretty constant flashes of lightning outside the plane, and the plane starts shaking harder than her or her mom had ever experienced. Hard enough for stuff to come spilling out of the luggage compartment, uneaten food and drinks are flying all over the cabin, and people are starting to scream and to cry. Suddenly, a blinding white light hits the entire cabin, and Juliane looks out the window to see a flash of light hitting the wing. They've been hit by lightning, and unlike modern planes, where that energy is diverted, in modern planes they have things that absorb the energy from the lightning so that it doesn't affect the plane at all. In these old planes, especially this Lanza plane, this plane's just raw dogging this lightning. Like it's just taking it. And it essentially shuts down the turbines. It shuts down everything.
It would be useful to put like a big rubber around the wing though, because that would negate the lightning strike, right?
Yeah.
So maybe you don't want to raw dog that.
Sure. All right. So suddenly this plane falls steeply forward, and Juliane can see all the way down the aisle and into the cockpit, but it's like she's looking down, not across. And she can hear the roaring of these turbine engines as they're failing, the screaming of the passengers and crew, and somehow over everything she hears her mom say, "Now it's all over." The loud noises around them get louder, they enter into a free fall. Suddenly all these screams, all these noises are cut off, and all she can hear is rushing air. She looks around, and her mom and this big Peruvian guy are gone. She's strapped to the bench of 3 seats, so it's just her in the one seat, and then the other 2 are empty. And she's just completely alone, 10,000 feet above the jungle, free falling through the air.
Oh, man.
Yeah. And again, I really like that she says,
"What would you?"
Yeah, we're going to do a "What would Mike and Jeff do?" Werner Herzog actually kind of said this to her, and she really liked it. She says that she didn't leave the plane left her. Like this plane just disintegrated around her, and suddenly she's falling through the air. So she's spinning through the air, her seatbelt's pinching her stomach so tightly that it really hurt, and she loses consciousness and then wakes up again. And now she's upside down, and she can see the forest rushing up toward her. She says the tops of these trees look like broccoli heads, and then she passes out again. During that time, she has 2 dreams. One where she's running through a low, dark space and trying really hard not to hit a wall, and there's this really loud noise that sounds like a turbine. And in the second dream, she just feels really dirty and sticky, like she's covered in filth, but she can't wash it off. And in that dream, she keeps telling herself, all you have to do is get up and go to the bathtub. And when she finally does get up in the dream, she wakes up in real life.
That's like the reverse dream. Like when you're sitting in class and you feel like you're falling and about to hit the ground and you wake up and like shake everything around. This one, you're like all calm and then you wake up and you're like, oh shit. Like,
That's a good point.
shake
Yeah.
everything up.
She literally was falling through the air and then fell asleep right when she was about to hit the ground.
Yeah.
So when she wakes up, these bench of seats are kind of like forming a V over the ground, and she has crawled under them. So at some point, she had waken up, taken off her seatbelt, and crawled under these seats, but she doesn't remember that at all.
That's crazy.
She lays there for the rest of the day and the night, and in the morning, she's completely soaked and covered in mud. So it must have rained a lot through the night.
Wait, did you say she hit the ground? When did you say that?
No, she doesn't remember hitting the ground at all.
She just woke up on the ground.
The last thing she saw in the air was the forest rushing up to her.
Broccoli.
And then she woke up on the ground. And we're going to talk about what could have happened there. So now she opens her eyes finally. She realizes what has happened. She looks at the canopy of the forest, and she realizes, I was in a plane crash and I'm completely alone. Her mom's gone. She has a concussion. One of her eyes is completely swollen shut, and the other one is open just a little slit. And she's lost her glasses too, so she really can't see much at all. She looks back down, or she lies back down, and she does an inventory on her injuries. She doesn't really feel any pain at all. She says it feels like her whole body is packed in cotton, and that's because she has a spinal injury that she doesn't know about, one that would actually give her headaches for the rest of her life. But the first thing she feels that's wrong, she feels her clavicle or her collarbone, and it's broken in half, and the 2 pieces are kind of overlaying each other, but they haven't pierced the skin. So it just feels like she can feel the loose bones in there kind of scraping on top of each other, but she feels no pain whatsoever. The next thing she notices is she has a ragged, about 2-inch long cut on her calf that looks like a little canyon that's pretty deep and open. And then later she finds a big puncture wound on the back of her arm that's deep, but really not that big. And we're actually going to come back to that one, and you guys aren't going to like it. That one's going to get pretty gross. That's where our wildlife is going to come into play. So the search has already been launched. She can hear the planes flying above the canopy, but this is such thick canopy that there's just absolutely no way they're going to see her. And she knows that. She starts yelling and screaming to see if anyone else is around. No one answers. She's obviously screaming for her mom. No one answers. She can't see any other wreckage. And it finally hits her like, how am I alive? How did I survive this? How did I plunge 2 miles down to hit the planet? And Jeff, it wasn't a fire ant colony this time.
Yeah.
Because Jeff told a really fun Patreon story, which I think we shared wide, about a woman who fell out of a plane, hit a fire ant colony, and somehow survived. But that's not what happened to her.
But she did get bit by ants.
She does get bit by a lot of bugs. Yeah.
No, that lady in my story. She got bit by the ants.
So did
Juliane.
Juliane.
Just say that she didn't get bit by the ants.
Well, the ants are what woke her up, right? That's like the whole story.
It like revived her.
Yeah. So when she talked to Werner Herzog, they kind of came up with a theory of how she had survived this fall. And there's 3 things. First of all, these kind of storms often have really powerful updrafts that could kind of cushion you as you're falling because you have a lot of wind blowing up against you. And the second thing that was probably related to that is she had this bench of 3 seats sticking out from her. And so she kind of likened it to one of those seed pods. When they fall, they spin.
The helicopter spin.
Yeah, it really slows down their descent. And she thinks that's kind of what her row of seats was doing as she was falling too, because she does remember spinning. The final thing, and I think this is probably the most important thing, is where she happened to land, there's a dense network of liana vines. And these are a really woody, dense vine that you see in the Amazon. They're much more, they feel almost more like tree than they do vine. But if you were to hit a canopy that's full of those, they would soften the blow enough to where you could like kind of get slowed way down as you're coming to Earth. I think if you were just to hit a tree or a big tree branch, it would probably kill you instantly, and she agrees with that. But if you were to hit these vines, there is the chance they would kind of function like a net, and that's what they think happened with her.
That's not what happened to Clayton and Tarzan, though.
No, he didn't do so great.
Yeah, the vines got him.
And a lot of the videos Jeff has sent me from the dark web of people trying to jump into trees, it doesn't go so well for them either. Right, Jeff?
You just need a 3-seat bench tied to you, I guess, is the key.
Sometimes it works, though.
Sometimes it does work. That's true.
If you jump in a tree from really high up.
Yeah. We talk about this almost every episode now. We're going to have to do it at some point. When she finally does get her wits around her, she feels really abandoned, but she doesn't panic. And I think this is the key to her survival. When I heard about this story at first, I always thought, oh, this is someone who like thrived in the jungle because she knew so much about it. It's not that. She has a really hard time, which we're going to talk about, but she doesn't panic. Like she doesn't lose her wits. And I think that is what her experience in the jungle really helped her with. She feels really confident about the flora, the fauna, and just how to make it out. A lot of other people would probably panic about dangerous animals, about the different threats that you would think are in the jungle. But she knows that if she's going to die, it's probably going to be from either starvation or from exposure.
What are the animals that could have got her?
What do you think?
Jaguar?
Yep.
Mountain lion? Puma?
Puma? Yeah.
Giant anteater?
Nope.
Pink river dolphin?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that could potentially hurt her, I guess. But the ones you would probably be most concerned about are the 2 big cats, Jaguar and Puma. And then there's a few others like black caiman, piranha. Really, the 2 that she actually has to worry about. And I was going to talk about this later, but we can get into this now. And she knows this. She's probably spent her whole life in the jungle and never seen a jaguar at this point. I'd be surprised if she had. So she's not worried about big cats, which is smart. She shouldn't be. The 2 that she's worried about are freshwater stingrays and venomous snakes. And those are the 2 that she should be worried about because she doesn't have protection. She doesn't have boots. She has 1 sandal and she's wearing like a light mini dress, and that's all she has. So she's not very well prepared for snakes or stingrays. And these stingrays, they are a certain type of freshwater stingray. They're called the ocelate stingray, I believe. And they have a really venomous barb, just like any other stingray. And it really can do a lot of damage if they get you. People sometimes take months to recover from these stings, and you're pretty immobile during that time. So they can also kind of push dirt and bacteria in when they sting you, and that can lead to infection and whatnot. So that is kind of her main thing that she has to worry about, because she, as we're going to get to, she's going to spend a lot of this time in water. That was a good question though, Jeff. But I would say those are two things that she really has to worry about. And those are the two that she's most cautious with. So she's really thirsty. She runs around. She drinks a bunch of water that's on plant leaves and stuff. And one thing she immediately remembers is how disorientating the jungle can be. So as she's running around drinking, she's focusing on one tree so she doesn't get turned around while she's doing this, because she wants to remember where the crash site is. There's no wreckage or anything nearby, but she does find a bag of sweets, is what she says. So like little candies. And then she finds this Peruvian fruit cake that's so mushed up in the mud that she decides not to take it with her because it just tastes disgusting. She probably should have, but she doesn't. And these little candies, she limits herself to 4 a day. She sucks on 4 of them a day. And that's honestly the only food she'll have during this entire thing. So just keep that in mind.
Wow.
She's going to be in the jungle for 11 days, and that's all she ever has.
I used to steal the hard candies out of the survival kits my mom used to make for us when we were little. Just put some Jolly Ranchers in there. I was eating more than 4 a day, I'll tell you that.
Was your mom a prepper?
Future, you would be so mad if something had happened.
That's true.
You're just like, damn, I ate all those.
I need the Jolly Ranchers. I guess she was kind of a prepper, yeah.
Tooth and Claw is brought to you by Element. Healthy hydration isn't just about drinking water. It's about water and electrolytes. It makes sense. You lose both water and sodium when you sweat. Both need to be replaced to prevent muscle cramps, headaches, and energy dips. But most people only replace the water. Why? Because since the 1940s, we've been told to drink 8 glasses of water per day, thirsty or not. So in this story, she's told 8. That was out there already, 1940s.
She needed some Element, yeah.
Yeah. I went to like a really good massage therapist the other day. Guess what? After the massage, he gave me water with some salt in it because he said that will get rid of your toxins more. And it didn't taste very good.
Did you spit it out in his face and say, give me some Element?
I still knew that he was right, so I drank it. But the thing I love about Element is that it also tastes great. You're guaranteed to find an Element flavor you love. Try fan favorite citrus salt or raspberry salt, get spicy with mango chili, or mix chocolate salt into your morning coffee for a mean mocha. Element came up with a fantastic offer for us. Get your free sample pack with any Element purchase at drinklmnt.com/tooth. Be sure to try the new Element Sparkling, a bold 16-ounce can of sparkling electrolyte water.
So when Juliane kind of gets her wits about her, she remembers something from her past. When she had spent time at the research station, a group of scientists from Berkeley were visiting, and they went on an expedition up into the mountains of the Amazon. And on this expedition, one of the leaders accidentally shot himself in the leg. When that happened, he was so big that they couldn't carry him out. So they sent a student to go get help, and he immediately got lost. And when that happened, he was smart enough to know, I'm going to follow water. So he found a creek, he followed that to the river, and once he got to the river, he just waited because there was boats that were going to pass on this river. And sure enough, he got to help. He got back to the research station. And that was a story that really stuck in Juliane's mind. Plus, her dad had always told her, if she gets lost in the jungle, follow the water. So while she's sitting there, she's listening, and she realizes that over all the different sounds that she was hearing, she could still hear the turbines in her mind, all these different things over the yelling she was doing. She hadn't noticed the soft babbling of a tiny brook nearby. And when she finally did hear it, she found out where it was. She started walking along it. And that brook quickly turned into a larger creek. Meanwhile, her dad's in Pucallpa, which was the city that this plane was supposed to get to. And he heard about the crash, but he's like, oh, I told them not to go on this plane. There's no way they're on it. But then he's crestfallen the next day. Yeah. He's crestfallen when he sees a list of the people that were on this plane, and both Maria and Juliane's names come up. So he's waiting for them, and he's pretty sad.
Yeah, that sucks because he can't even do like the I told you so.
Right. That's a good
That's the
point.
worst part.
That was
Like,
the
if
thing
I
that
were
made
him, I
the
would
saddest.
just be like, God damn, I was right, but they will never know.
No one's gonna know how right I was.
He probably took solace. He's like, in those last moments of their life that was so tragically cut short, they knew I was right. Is probably what he was thinking.
And like you can tell the news or your friends, like, yeah, I told them not to go on it, but it just doesn't
Not the
hit.
same.
Like they won't care as much.
Yeah, they'll be like, "Oh, that's kind of a weird thing to say right now." So she's walking this stream, and at night she would find some kind of thing behind her, like a tree or a riverbank or something that she could lean up against, so that at least her back was protected. You might be saying, protected from what, Wes? Well, the main thing that was a problem at night were bugs. She was getting torn apart by mosquitoes. There was these gnats that were always on her, and it was awful. And then when it would rain, the bugs would stop, but it would get so cold when it was raining. She said every raindrop felt like a pinprick, and it was excruciating. So it was either a miserable night from the rain or a miserable night from the bugs, mostly mosquitoes. So she did her best to protect as much of her body as she could at night, but the nights were definitely the worst for her. Each day she would get up, she would keep moving along this stream. At one point, she sees a Goliath bird-eating spider, but doesn't really give it a second thought. You guys ever heard of this spider before?
I have,
Yeah.
yeah. They're cool.
They're sweet.
Yeah, it's the biggest spider on the planet. It's a tarantula. So, like all the tarantulas, it's not really that dangerous. If you were to get
You
bit
think
by the
it's
spider,
The hairiest spider on the planet? Like
probably.
it would have the most hairs?
I would guess so. It's because it's so big, and then it also just is really hairy.
Yeah. Isn't that the one that like sheds its hairs and then it gives people a reaction?
Most of the tarantulas do that. So they'll raise their abdomen up and they scrape their hairs off and kind of throw them at you. And it's like fiberglass when you get them on you. I've had that happen before, and it's terrible. Sometimes those hairs will stay for months or even years. It's pretty miserable.
If scientists gave Jeff a similar name, he'd be the Goliath McRib eating human, probably.
Anyway, she sees the spider and she knows.
You're not that big, Jeff. You're looking pretty good, actually.
You are looking good. Both of you are looking great.
Thanks, man.
No, there's
My
a good
BC
diff. I had
boys.
like nothing. I still can't think of anything.
You shut them
I'm
down.
sure you could have, but you want to keep things a little polite, I'm sure.
So she sees the spider. She knows if I get bit by a tarantula, it's pretty much just like a bee sting, which is true. They're not dangerous spiders. In fact, when we go to Brazil, if I see a tarantula, I'm going to pick it up so everyone can handle it, because they are kind of the puppy dogs of the spider world, in my opinion.
Cool.
So the stream gets bigger and it's deep enough now to wade in, but at that point, her main worry does switch to this oscillate river stingray. We talked about them. They have a venomous barb, and you really don't want to get stung by one of these stingrays, especially if you're way out in the middle of nowhere by yourself. So she gets a stick and she's very careful to try and probe the mud in front of her as she moves down this stream. On her third day, she finally finds her first piece of wreckage, which is a big piece of one of these turbines near the creek. And each night, she's just finding new places to sleep. She's going through this misery in the nights, and then she's just moving as far as she can in the day down the creek. On the fourth day, she's walking in the creek, and she hears long, slow, heavy wing flaps of a big bird. And this is one of the first things that makes her really scared. Why do you guys think that might be?
She's like, it reminds her of the plane.
It's a good guess.
PTSD. That's
When
really
you
the
think
only one that
about
came to my mind.
When you think about the biggest birds in the jungle, what are they probably going to be?
In like the Amazon, like an eagle.
Even bigger.
Even bigger
really?
than an eagle. A vulture.
Yeah,
She thinks
a
she's
vulture.
dying.
Pterodactyl. Oh,
Jeff
yeah.
got it. So she hears the wing beats of king vultures, which are incredibly beautiful birds. Look them up if you have a second. They're one of my favorite birds to see in the tropics, but they are carrion eaters. These are birds that eat dead things. And when she hears them, she knows that she's probably close to something dead. She rounds a bend in the creek and she sees a 3-seat bench, just like the one that she had been on, except the force of this bench hitting the earth has rammed it headfirst 3 feet down into the dirt. And unfortunately, all 3 passengers are still strapped into their seats.
Oh, no.
So they're 3 feet buried in the ground, and just their legs and part of their torso is sticking up.
So they're like super excited to see her.
They are not excited to see anything at this point. Yeah. She checks on one of them. She knows they're dead, obviously. Ugh. I think it's been
That would have
long
been
enough.
crazy if they were, because that would mean they were like zombies. And that's just
Well,
another layer of danger for her,
yeah.
you know?
I'm just going to say this now. I was going to say it at the end. At least 14 other people they think survived this fall.
Wow.
But they were so injured and strapped into their seats that they just died slowly over a matter of days, including her mom.
No way.
Yeah. So that was kind of a hard pill to swallow for a lot of the people that were related and for her and everything. Okay. Even though she like deep down knows this isn't her mom because her mom had been on the same bench as her, she checks the woman in these three to see if it could be her mom. And she sees that she has painted toenails and she realizes my mom never painted her toenails. This isn't her. And she leaves the site. But this is like a really hard moment for her. It makes the whole thing very real. So most of her days are pretty alike. She just keeps moving down the stream, putting one foot in front of the other. She finishes the candy. She's too afraid to eat anything else. And she's really not hungry, which is crazy. She really doesn't want to eat anything poisonous. But she is drinking water from the river. And there's so much silt in that water that it kind of fills her up as she's drinking it. This is clean water. It's clean. I mean, it's probably has some stuff in it, but she's drank it kind of her whole life. So she's not too worried about it.
Okay.
On the 6th day of her trek, she hears a sound that makes her hopeful. And it's the strange wheezing call of a Hoatzin. Hoatzin is a really strange bird. It kind of looks like an Archaeopteryx. Do you guys know what an Archaeopteryx is?
No.
It's like a prehistoric kind of midpoint between birds and dinosaurs, where they have a very reptilian-looking face, lots of feathers, and it's kind of this weird meeting point between reptiles and birds. And that's what a Hoatzin kind of looks like. They have a really reptilian-looking face. They have these kind of barb-like feathers. They're really cool birds. I see a lot of them in Ecuador. But the thing that makes her so happy about hearing a Hoatzin is they almost always hang out by larger rivers. That's where you find these birds. So when she hears this call, she knows I'm closer to a river than I thought, and she immediately diverts and goes toward that sound. And sure enough, she finds a larger river. It's about 30 feet wide. There's some current moving, and she's pretty thrilled. But something that does dampen her excitement is she sees this river is full of logs and driftwood and stuff, and she realizes people aren't navigating this river on boats. It's too clogged with logs, so she's not going to run into like a fisherman or something probably. At this point, she realizes I'm probably not going to be rescued, so I have to get myself to civilization. She's also in a more open area now, so she's thinking if there were planes, they might see me. But the planes aren't searching anymore. They've been searching for days now. They haven't seen a single thing. So they pretty much called off the search at this point. And that's really a hard pill for her to swallow because she feels now like maybe they rescued everyone else and they just kind of gave up on her and she's abandoned. Aside from those 3 people, which definitely did not get rescued. So she keeps moving along the edge of this river. It's really slow going though, and it's prime for stingrays. So she decides she's going to go out in the middle of the river and basically swim. And one thing that I really like about her is she's not freaked out about animals. She knows there's piranhas out there. She knows there's caiman, anaconda, and she knows that none of those animals are going to bother her, which I really like. She's seen a lot of caiman in her life, and caiman can be kind of scary when you're in the water because if you scare them, they come out into the water toward you. But that's just because they're trying to get into the water to get away. They're not coming at you. They're just coming at the water. They always go into the water. And so if you're in the middle of the river, it looks like they're coming at you, but they're not. They won't make contact with you. Yeah. These are mostly spectacled caiman. So they're a mid-sized species of caiman. They don't attack people unless you harass them. I've actually caught one of them in Florida, an invasive one, to remove it. And they're very strong, but they don't try and bite you unless you're doing something to them.
Yeah, it just feels like crocodilian, you're in trouble, you know?
Yeah, but with caiman, that's just really not the case. When we go to Brazil, you guys are going to see thousands of yacaré caiman, and they just try and get away when you see them. They just don't care about you at all, aside from trying to get away.
Well, that's kind of messed up.
Yeah.
Do they exhibit the same behavior as other, like, do they do the gator rolls, and are they pretty much similar?
They're fish eaters, so they don't really ever get prey where they have to really gator roll like that. I think if they did get larger prey, they probably would, but they're almost exclusively eating fish. So they really don't have to.
So she's just kind of floating downstream.
Floating downstream, yep. And she's pretty confident that if she floats downriver, she'll sooner or later hit something. And she's getting weaker and weaker by the day. She's drinking water, but that's it. And she does her best not to think about her mom because that's the one thing that really fills her with a lot of despair. But during the next few days, there is something that starts to worry her quite a bit. If you're eating, as we talk about this, you might want to pause and finish your meal and then start the podcast back up. So we talked about that ragged cut on her calf. It's been underwater this whole time, so it's getting that like really white kind of ragged flesh all around it. And that makes her a little nervous. But what's really making her nervous is that dime-sized puncture hole on the back of her arm, because she's starting to feel a lot of pain there, and she feels something else that makes her even more worried, and that's movement. So she twists her head around as far as she can to see this wound, and when she does, she's shocked to see that it's absolutely full of big, writhing white maggots.
No.
It's bigger, it's deeper than it was, and she can see like masses of maggots moving underneath this thing inside of her arm.
Jeez.
Some of them are poking their heads up through her wound, kind of like little asparagus heads, and she knows that this is like a really bad thing. So at some point, a screwworm fly or maybe a blowfly has laid its eggs inside of her arm. Female screwworm flies can lay up to 250 to 500 eggs in exposed flesh. And what they do is they hatch and burrow into the surrounding tissue. And because their screwworm name is because they screw down as they're eating. So they actually like screw down into the flesh, and they're capable of causing severe tissue damage and even death in their hosts.
Dude.
So like a lot of flies lay their eggs in stuff that's already dead. Screwworm flies or blowflies will lay eggs, and botflies, in stuff that's still alive. I don't think this was a botfly because they usually just have like bumps for each larva. This was probably a screwworm or a blowfly because there's like a writhing mass of maggots in her arm, which is
That's
awful.
crazy. It's crazy that there's just like flies out there just like ready to go once they see a wound too. Like,
Yeah, they saw that wound and that fly's just rubbing its little hands
Yeah,
together.
like, yeah.
Oh,
This is what I've
hell
been
yes.
waiting for.
Licking its chops.
I'm going to pump so many eggs in that thing.
Ugh. What recourse do you have? Like, what did she do about it?
Yeah.
You're probably going to get into it, but can
Yeah,
you
no, that's a perfect segue.
do anything about that?
She knows it's serious. She had a dog that had an infestation like this. And what she does is she has a spiral ring around her finger that she kind of opens and bends apart. And she uses the end of that to try and pry some of these maggots out. But whenever she gets close to them, they dip down and they dig deeper into her arm. She can feel
Crazy.
them like burrowing deeper. And so she's like, okay, this isn't working. I have to stop. But she remembers this dog, and what her dad had done was pour kerosene on its wound, which really hurt, but it did kill all the larvae. They come to the surface to escape, and then you can just pick them away. So this is like the thing that I think is most impressive about her is she just kind of puts a pin in it. She's like, you know what? There's nothing I can do right now. I'll deal with this when I can deal with it. And I don't think I could do that. I think I would only be thinking about the writhing mass of maggots in my arm. I don't think I could focus on anything else. But she's able just to kind of say, all right, I'll get back in the river.
Brutal.
Tooth and Claw is brought to you by Rocket Money. The start of a new year is a perfect time to get organized, set goals, prioritize the things that matter most. And for me, one of those things this year is financial wellness. It feels really important as prices go up, as things get more expensive. I want to make sure I'm not wasting my money. And thanks to Rocket Money, my goals feel really achievable. They're showing me all of my subscriptions in one place. They help me easily cancel ones that I forgot about. And they pull all of my spending together across all of my different accounts so that I can track my spending habits and make sure I'm not wasting money unnecessarily. And I really like it. It's a personal finance app, Rocket Money, that can help you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. Jeff, I know for you this is true. For me, it's definitely true. I've found a number of subscriptions that I had no idea I was paying for. I was paying for 2 Netflix accounts somehow, and Rocket Money discovered that for me, and I was able to cancel it and actually get a lot of that money back, which was amazing. They have a great dashboard that gives you a clear view of your expenses, and they have over 5 million users that have saved a total of 500 million in canceled subscriptions. So it's really important that you just have a good view of your finances, and I love Rocket Money for that. So cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/claw today. That's rocketmoney.com/claw, rocketmoney.com/claw. So she's back in the water. She's just going to worry about these maggots later. One thing she does notice that also makes her a little discouraged is all the wildlife is really unbothered by her. She's seeing brocket deer, she's seeing martens, she's seeing howler monkeys, all these things right by the water that just don't really give a shit about her. And that makes her realize, I'm not in a place where people spend a lot of time. These animals haven't seen people.
That's interesting. I don't know if because like
I don't either.
Animals get accustomed to people, and then they'll be like more warm to
they
them.
They could be habituated.
Too.
Yeah, I don't fully agree with that either, but I do like how much she's paying attention to her surroundings. I think she's a really smart person.
Vin Diesel in Triple X when he realizes the waitress was wearing high heels but doesn't have blisters. That's the kind of like analytical mindset she's got.
Exactly. The CIA should hire her after this.
Exactly.
Another really concerning thing for Juliane is she's getting super weak and everything is getting really hard. She's floating in the water a lot. She's kind of cycling in and out of different stages of consciousness. At one point, she feels a really sharp pain in her back and she realizes she's so sunburnt that she has blisters, but she just keeps swimming and floating. She's having these miserable nights and she knows that if she stops, she'll die. She knows she doesn't have much longer left. She also knows that she has to eat. And at that point, there's lots of frogs around, but they're poison dart frogs. She's trying to catch them and eat them.
I was wondering about poison dart frogs.
Yeah. She's trying to catch them and eat them, and she knows that she runs the risk of getting really, really sick. Luckily, she can't catch any of them because this specific type of dart frog that she's trying to catch probably wouldn't kill a healthy adult, but might kill someone that hasn't eaten for like 8 days and is fighting a bunch of infections and stuff. So it's a good thing she didn't catch any of them. Okay, we're getting to the end of this. Don't worry. On the 10th day, she's so weak that she's about to give up, and she's drifting motionlessly in the water and bumping into logs and stuff. She finds a sandbar that evening, and she crawls up on it to sleep. She's pretty delirious, totally weak, probably not far from death. And then she thinks she's hallucinating when she looks down the sandbar and sees a boat. She rubs her eyes. She does like the cartoon, rubs her eyes a few times, and she still sees the boat. So she crawls over to it, she touches it, and then she realizes that there's also a tiny little trail going up the riverbank and some kind of earthen steps that have been carved into that trail. So she crawls up there, and it's really hard. She has no energy, so it takes her hours to crawl up. But when she gets to the top, she sees what's called a tombo. And a tombo is like a really makeshift hut made from poles and like a thatched roof. It's about 10 by 15. And she goes into this tombo. And inside, there's an outboard motor for that boat that's been stored there. So she knows that people have been in this area. And it gives her a lot of hope. Another thing that's in there is a can of gasoline. And she remembers that dog. So she finds a tiny hose. She sucks out some of this gasoline and she drips it onto her wound with all the maggots. And sure enough, it kills a bunch of them. It hurts really bad, but she's able to pull 30 maggots out with her little bent open ring.
Oh, nice.
Wow.
She'd find out later she's just kind of scratching the tip of the iceberg here with the number of maggots in her arm. But for now, she's really pleased with herself. And the wood floor of this tombo is actually really uncomfortable. So she takes a tarp from the tombo, goes down to the sandbar, wraps up like a little burrito, and finally has a good night of sleep. The next day, she crawls back up there and she considers taking the boat, but she's worried that if she does that and there's like a woodcutter or something out in the jungle, if he comes back and his boat's gone, she's kind of doomed him to a similar fate. So she doesn't want to do that. She starts trying to catch frogs again. She can't do it. So she just passes out one more time.
That's nice of her. I like that mindset.
Yeah, she's a good person. She really
It'd be real
is.
hard not to just
Take the boat.
instinctively just take the boat and get yourself to safety.
Yeah, and I think at some point she probably would, but she decides to wait longer. And really part of what's pushing her forward at this point is just that she knows if she dies, she's not going to be able to tell this story to anyone of like her incredible journey through the jungle. And she starts thinking she's probably going to die. And then right at twilight that night, on the 11th day, she hears voices. She can't believe it. She thinks she's probably just imagining it when suddenly 3 men walk out and they stop in shock. And she immediately says, "I'm the girl who was in the Lanza crash. My name is Juliane."
Mm-hmm. She probably memorized that like
Yeah,
Inigo
she's
Montoya
been saying it over and over.
in The
and over.
Princess Bride. Yeah.
These 3 men are Beltran Paredes, Carlos Vasquez, and Nestor Amasufun. His name's hard. They take care of her. They feed her. They tend to her. They take about 50 more maggots out of her arm. And they admit to her when they first saw her, they thought she was the water goddess Yakumama because of her blonde hair and her eyes. And she thinks they just are saying it's because her eyes are light. But what she doesn't know is that every single blood vessel in her eye is burst. There's no white visible in her eyes anymore. They are completely red. Even her irises are red. And this is funny because I saw a bunch of photos of her right after her rescue, and I was like, why does she look like an alien? Because they're all in black and white, and her eyes are completely dark and red. Like, you can't see any white whatsoever. So she looked really fucking scary.
Wow.
Yeah.
Huh.
All right, I'm just going to quickly sum up the rest because there's a ton left in her book at this point. We're not going to go over all of it, obviously. But she gets taken to a small village. They don't really have appropriate medical personnel there, so they treat her. And then she has to fly, which has to be terrible, to the closest city where there are some doctors. And when she gets there, they pull even more maggots out of her arm, some out of her leg. They tend to all of her injuries, and her dad finally shows up, and they're able to have this really big emotional reunion. She's able to give the search crew a lot of context for the crash site, and over the following days and weeks, they find that the plane is scattered over about 15 kilometers, and they're able to find a lot of these deceased passengers. They do make this terrible discovery that a lot of them survived the crash, but died in the following days, including her mom.
Mm-hmm.
The crazy thing is when they finally find her mom, she's missing like the top half of her head. So it's kind of like they don't know when that happened. I wonder if some scavenger got her, like maybe a jaguar did show up. Who knows?
Man.
All right. She would grow up to become a famous mammologist, mostly focusing on bats. After her father's death, she would actually take over as director of Panguana, the rainforest reserve. Under her care, it would grow tenfold to over 4,000 acres. She's an amazing scientist, an inspirational person, a hero to a lot of people, including me, and I just think her story is amazing. I got a couple quick tidbits that are really interesting. I watched that Herzog documentary, and he actually flies her back to Pucallpa, the city, and then to the crash site, which was her first time going back. And he puts her on the same flight from Lima to Pucallpa, and he makes her sit in the exact same seat that she was sitting in. And she's visibly nervous. And then when it showed that he made her sit in the same seat, I like vocally was like, Werner.
Yeah.
Because she's like shaking as she's talking to him. It was crazy. Also, a kind of crazy thing is he was prepping for this documentary. He sent out crews to find as much wreckage as possible because it was still all out there in the jungle. And one of the people he sent out were one of her original rescuers. And while this guy was out, he got stung by a stingray. And it was a really bad sting. And he was about to like die himself on the side of the river. But he finally manages to flag down a boat. Not flash down, that'd be different.
That'd be
flag down. Yeah.
It'd be effective.
Interesting.
Yeah. The boat pulls up and they say, hey, we're only going to take you if you have some money. And he didn't have any money.
Oh, man.
And then he had a rifle and they're like, well, we'll take your rifle. So it was like his treasured rifle. This guy's pretty much Hugh Glass,
Yeah.
but he gives it to him and they take him to safety. And when Juliane visited, he was still recovering from this sting. And she went and tracked down these people, bought his rifle back and gave it to him, which I thought was really, really cool.
That's great.
Yeah. She was really hesitant to do much press afterwards, but when she heard that Herzog wanted to make a documentary, she knew him. She was a fan of his work, so she did it. And one of my favorite things, and this is kind of my final thought, is that when people said, about this ordeal and like conquering the jungle and how she did it, she would always treat the jungle as if it were her savior, not her enemy. And a quote from her that I really like is she said, "The jungle caught me. It saved me. It's not its fault that I landed there," which I really like.
That's
because it did catch her.
Yeah, that's awesome. I really like that mindset. Yeah. Much like Triple X.
She's cool. Yeah, a lot like Triple X.
This episode is brought to you by Quince. Elevating my style used to mean breaking the bank, and you guys know I'm no stranger to picking out some pretty odd pieces throwing in my collection, wearing them maybe
and breaking
once.
the bank in the
Breaking
process.
the bank a little bit. Yeah, not a very cost-effective method I have dressing myself. But enter Quince. It's high-end, very versatile pieces, and they offer them at prices that I can actually afford. Now I can upgrade my style by snagging killer luxury essentials that sync with my vibe and my wallet. And I got the, I think it's the Mongolian cashmere crew neck sweater. It's like $60. It's pretty crazy how cost-effective and like versatile, again, these pieces of clothing are. You can wear them every day. They're nice enough to wear them to like more formal quote unquote events, or just if you want to be warm on a winter day, run to the grocery store, throw on the Mongolian cashmere crew neck sweater. Great.
Softest things I own, without a
Yeah,
doubt.
I didn't really know what cashmere was all about till I got this. I knew it was like a comfy piece of material to put on your body. And
You just thought it was a Led Zeppelin song up until this
a
point.
great one.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, they're best probably. Another cool thing is they partner directly with top factories. So they cut the cost of the middleman and they pass the savings right on to us. That's how they can offer these really nice pieces of clothing at such affordable rates. So indulge in affordable luxury. Go to quince.com/tooth for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/tooth to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/tooth.
Do you guys have any questions about this story before we get into our categories? I feel like I know it pretty well now at this point.
So she didn't eat anything that whole time besides
Nothing,
what
just those candies.
Isn't
Yeah.
there? It feels like in the rainforest you could find food.
She didn't know that aspect well enough to where she felt confident to eat anything, because she knew, and I think this is really smart, she knew that the one thing that would really mess up her entire plan is if she ate something poisonous.
Like a
And-
poison arrow frog.
Yeah, like a dart frog. Yeah.
That's like
So
the
she
one
wasn't-
thing she's like, okay, I'll eat this.
Yeah. It's also the wet season when she was there. And so a lot of the fruit and stuff that you find isn't on during the wet season. It's a lot harder to find food. And she didn't have a machete or anything to cut down palm and eat the inside of palm or anything. So there's actually a really funny part in the documentary where Werner is like, if she had a machete, here's all the things she could have eaten. And it's just like a montage of them cutting down and eating all these different things that she wasn't able to eat. It's really good. I love this documentary. It's great. It's all in German, but it was really good. Mike, you got anything?
No, I was curious a little bit about the recovery after the fact, but you kind of covered the headaches that she would go on to suffer. But it seemed
Yeah,
like the clavicle or whatever it was she broke, it seemed like a lot was bad that she needed some pretty significant help with.
Yeah, it's crazy how minor her injuries were considering she fell 10,000 feet.
Yeah,
I mean, she got
just
up and
like to be
walked
able to
right
move.
afterward.
Yeah.
But I would recommend her book, When I Fell from the Sky. It is about 300 and something pages long. So we obviously glossed over a lot of that, but it's really interesting. It's interesting to hear about her recovery, about kind of everything that happened to her after this. It's a great book. All right, well, let's move on to our categories then. My first one for you guys is against the odds survival story that you love. It can be either pop fiction or real life.
You know,
Do either of you?
this
have
story
one?
actually did remind me of one. I wasn't planning on going with this one, but in the third Uncharted game, Nathan Drake, the plane goes down over the Sahara, I think the Sahara
Yeah.
Desert. And that's a really fun sequence. But I actually wanted to talk about Cherami, the messenger pigeon. I actually talked about her in a bonus episode a while ago, but she was delivering a missive to save a platoon from some friendly fire that was planned and scheduled to happen. And it was like within the hour that she arrived and like warned people to not bombard their allied forces. And she like got shot through the chest and the eye, and one of her wings was like barely hanging on. She somehow made it all the way. And it's just like, it's a really cool story of survival. And there was moments where he or she, it's actually kind of up for debate what gender this pigeon was now somehow. She got the Dickin medal, Wes. You remember that, I'm sure.
I do remember
But
that.
she was like running across the ground at a certain point because she couldn't fly anymore. And it's just funny to think about a pigeon running across a field of battle to deliver a message.
That is funny. Like 1917, where he runs across the field.
Yeah.
But it's a pigeon.
The Dickin medal, Jeff.
Jeff, what's your answer?
I was thinking the Netflix show You. The name of the show is You.
Yeah, interesting.
Just that
okay.
Joe from it keeps falling in love with the wrong girls, and they really mess his life up. and he's been
Yeah.
stabbed a bunch of times.
I'm not sure
Has
he's
to
the
like
victim in that
relocate to
story.
different places, but like the same pattern kind of happens all over again.
Yeah.
And he's just still alive somehow.
Is he supposed to be kind of the hero of that, or is he more kind of a villain?
He's just a
I think
guy
he's-
who wants to find love, you know?
Sure, sure. All right.
We can all relate.
I kind of my initial thought was to do the Louis Zamperini story that's in that book Unbroken, who
Oh,
was like
that's a
adrift
good
at sea. Yeah, he's adrift at sea, and then he was in a prisoner of war camp in World War II. Yeah, I'll do that. Sure. There's another one I thought of, but I'll do that one.
Well, I
Louis
didn't do a
Zamperini.
real one, so you can do two and get away with it.
Sure. So that was the first one I thought of. It's an incredible story. I thought the book was amazing.
Yeah.
The movie was kind of pretty mid, but the other one I had was Jose Salvador Alvarenga, who is in one of my favorite survival books called 438 Days. And it's about, he's a Salvadoran fisherman who just drifted away from Mexico and was adrift for 14 months in the ocean before he was rescued. And he's
That's
survived
insane.
longer than anyone else in just like a little panga in a tiny boat. And he like thrived. It's crazy. It's a crazy story. It's a great book. It's super inspirational because he maintains a pretty positive outlook the whole time somehow. So I love that story.
What would your first question be once you got recovered? Would you ask like who won the Super Bowl, or like, I was Dune 2 as good as I was hoping it was going to be? I guess you'd probably just go see it. I don't know. But
Yeah, he was 2012 to 2014.
Oh, I didn't know it
Yeah,
was
I
that
don't know.
recent. Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty recent. I don't know what my first question would be. That's a good question.
Food. Like
Yeah.
when
Uh,
Tom
food,
Hanks, they give
please.
him like a seafood
Where is
platter.
food? Yeah.
Oh
Yeah, when
yeah,
he's recovered at the
Castaway.
Castaway.
That was a good. He's just like
Yeah.
some FedEx dork. Like you didn't expect him to be able to make it, and he figured it out.
He
He
did
does
it.
great. Yeah.
No, a real one that you reminded me of is from Hacksaw Ridge, Sergeant Dawes, Desmond
Yeah.
Dawes. Just like I thought it was really admirable that he like felt the need to serve his country but
kill
wouldn't
anyone.
fire a weapon.
Yeah.
And then just like the fact that he was so useful was just running around like
It's crazy.
What's
Saving people.
what's that YouTube video? When the guy just charges.
Leroy Jenkins.
Oh, yeah, Leroy
Yeah,
Jenkins. It's like
He's
the OG
kind of just
YouTube
Leroy
video.
Jenkins out there, just like
Yeah.
running around saving people. And I like the movie, but I guess the actual story is almost even like more extreme type. One of the things in the movie that I was like, okay, that's stupid, is when he kicked the grenade out of the air, and then
Yeah.
I like read that actually happened.
Really?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So sweet. Just bicycle kick it back at the enemy.
All right. Our next category is going to be what would Mike and Jeff do? You get to pick. You're either plummeting through the air toward the earth on these seats, or you're waking up in the Amazon jungle by yourself.
If I was falling, I don't know. I almost feel like I'd go with like the same advice as like if you're being attacked by a grizzly bear. Just kind
curl
of
up and-
fetal position,
Yeah.
you know, play dead.
Yeah. I think part of what helped her was that she was unconscious when she hit
Yeah.
because she was so limp that she wasn't like bracing against anything.
Supposedly, like if you're about to get in a car accident, you're supposed to go limp and stuff too.
Yeah. Just pass yourself out real quick.
Yeah, I don't know. Like as far as her in the jungle, I feel like she did pretty good. I would have maybe tried to just like turn that turbine she found on and like
Fly
use
that
that.
out of there.
That's a good
one.
That's a good move. Yeah, she should have done that. Have you guys ever read Angels and Demons, the Dan Brown book?
No.
So it's kind of a follow up to the Da Vinci Code. And I was having, admittedly, you know, I'm not the foremost Dan Brown hater out here, but there are moments in those books that are real bad. But there's one at the end, near the end of Angels and Demons, where Langdon falls out of an airplane. And to this point, Dan had done a pretty good job of creating crazy scenarios, but then also offering a pretty plausible way for Robert Langdon to get out of them. But this one, he was falling thousands of feet out of the air when he got like thrown off a plane or something. And he used his jacket as like a parachute, his tweed
like
jacket.
Mary Poppins.
Yeah. And it was just one of those moments where it's like, all right, you've pushed me.
Jump the shark.
just a little bit too far on this one. I think that book has its merits. I'm not just like a baseless hater, but that's what I would do, I guess, is what I'm saying. I'd use my jacket as a parachute.
That's a parachute. That's smart.
All right.
Apparently it works.
If I was Werner, I would like recreate the plane crash. I'd like make her crash again.
Like full cinema verite. Yeah. I thought one of you would say like blow really hard as you're falling to try and stop your fall.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Jeff, I like the turbine one. Maybe when she was in that hut with the gasoline, she could carry it all the way back to the turbine.
Yeah, I
and
just feel
try
like
and
if you find a
start it back
turbine,
up.
you gotta find some way to use that to help you out.
Sure. That's what Tony Stark would do, probably.
It's very Bear Grylls of her though.
Yeah.
To
She's tough.
what in Bear Grylls like Montana one, that's what he did was just find a river and float down it forever.
It's great advice. Like that,
and he
honestly, is
faked
great
all
advice.
his things too. Like
Yeah.
he was at hotels at night.
I'm
and
wondering
stuff.
if he ever really drank his pee now. I don't know.
I saw him drink his pee out of a dead rattlesnake, which for me was like, okay, he can sleep in a hotel if he's doing that.
Okay.
for
Yeah,
TV.
sure.
All right. So I have a would you rather. Would you rather have close to 100 maggots in your arm or get stung in both feet by one of those river stingrays?
Maggots, I think.
Well, I mean, so do I need to have like a huge wound in both my arms?
No, it's just one arm. And we'll say with the stingrays, you're going to get help, but you're going to get stung in both feet.
But like, what's my wound in my arm?
It's the size of hers, dime sized, but deep.
Okay.
And they're
so-
kind of carving out a little hole in there.
Yeah. I'll take the maggots.
Me too. I just think having your feet be operational is such a big deal in a survival situation.
I think I'm with you guys, but I would say I Googled, there's a specific term for a maggot infestation. It's called like myiasis or something. And I Googled that and it is rough. There are some rough pictures of people with maggot infestations on the internet. So, but I do think I think I kind of would love to tell people I've had that experience.
One of my like biggest regrets in life is just that I'll never be able to give birth to a human.
Yeah.
So
you can give
at
birth
least
to
like I could give
hundreds of
birth to
flies.
like a bunch of maggots and kind of feel a little bit of that.
That's
void,
true.
You know,
The miracle of life.
Is
yeah.
that like a regret that you can't? I don't know if that's the right term. I understand what you're trying to say, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wish I could
Sure.
just be popping kids out.
It's not like you ever made a
Seems so
decision
fun.
somewhere along the way that stopped you from being able to give birth. But whatever.
I
Maybe you
remember
did.
once I was following this story, this guy online who had a botfly larva in his arm. He just had like one, and they form a little kind of like lump, and you know it's in there, and it gets really inflamed and stuff. And he chronicled it over the weeks that it was maturing, and he felt a sense of loss when it finally erupted and left. He like
That's
felt
crazy.
like
What?
abandoned.
Yeah, that's how I
Yeah.
would be.
Yeah. So you'd be a
Bereft.
great mom, Jeff, to those little
Thanks.
flies.
Probably
right.
not to like a human, but to the flies.
Postpartum blues for 70 maggots.
So one more main category for you guys, just something you recommend this week. I had a couple things come up that I really wanted to recommend, so I wanted to include this category.
Ooh.
Maybe
Do
I'll go
tell.
first since
Yeah.
I have them. The first is the movie Companion, which was produced by the guy that directed one of my favorite horror movies of the last few years, Barbarian. I forget the name of the director, but it stars Jack Quaid and Sophie Thatcher. It's a great little kind of sci-fi horror movie that I just loved. I wouldn't even say sci-fi. It's kind of like a little bit futuristic, maybe 10 years in the future. And I really liked it. And I think people complain about how movies are all based off of existing IP or their sequels or whatever these days. This is an original, really good movie done for a small budget, and it's a unique idea. So go out and watch it. I think you'll really like it. And my second one was a show called Common Side Effects, which is Mike Judge and then some of the people that made Scavenger's Reign, which is like my favorite show for a long time. It's got similar animation style as Scavenger's Reign, but kind of mixed with like a Beavis and Butthead animation. I love it. There's 3 or 4 episodes out and it's so good. And I'm just already really hooked. So I really, really recommend that show. Those are my 2 recommendations.
Great. I like Jack.
People say he's a nice guy too.
Yeah.
I really like this new Netflix show, Wyatt Earp and the Cowboy War. Tombstone's one of my favorite Westerns, but it's hard to really know with Tombstone, like how much truth you're getting in it. And it ended up being a lot more than I expected.
Huh.
The Netflix, it's like a documentary with like historians telling the story, but actors acting it out. It's almost like Drunk History. Not really funny, it's more serious. But yeah, I just thought it was really interesting. And I think that time period, it's just like crazy where there was like laws, but then they only mattered if someone made them matter. And I don't know. It's just really interesting.
I'm going to recommend FKA Twig's new album, Eusexua. I think Eusexua, something like that. I love it. I was very lukewarm on a first listen, and then I just couldn't stop thinking about it. I took a long walk, listened to it a couple more times in a row, and it really feels like I came up with a description. It's not going to make sense to anyone but like 5 people out there. There's this weird window when PlayStation was offering out these demo discs, and it had this very particular aesthetic of mercurial, futuristic, blue tinged like futurism, but in like a very specific kind of way. And the sounds that this album makes kind of make me feel like I got sucked into one of those and live in there for like 40 minutes or so. Just really cool soundscapes, maybe a little monotone, like it never gets like outside of its little sonic box that it first establishes itself in, but sometimes you just kind of want a good moody piece of music to listen to that doesn't shake you up too violently, but just really cool. I just love the way she uses sound in her voice. One kind of a dud song on there, but other than that, I think you're gonna have a great time listening to it.
All right, that's cool.
Yeah.
Did you know I drove her for a little bit at Sundance?
No way, did you? I didn't know that.
Yeah,
She's great.
Like she was dating Shia LaBeouf, and I was Shia's driver.
Not so
which
great.
Didn't end up.
Memories for
But she was always just like easily the coolest person in it, whatever group she was in.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, she's rad.
What do you think of the halftime performance at the Super Bowl?
I really liked it. I was watching
Kendrick.
it with our parents and our family though, so there was a lot of people there that did not understand it or like it at all.
He is hard to understand.
Yeah. That's not the
cool.
point necessarily, you know?
No, but like I understand all people just like not understanding a single word that he said.
Yeah.
If you haven't listened to Kendrick before.
Even in the best of listening circumstances, it's pretty lyrically dense and tough to follow. So
I really liked how strong of a message it was, and one that you kind of have to think about. Like how Sam Jackson was kind of almost playing like a minstrel character. And then you had all this imagery relating to like America and how, you know, people of color have been subjugated. A lot of like how, you know, I don't know. I've read a lot about it since, even just like Serena Williams out there, crip walking, which was something that she
is awesome.
Yeah. And she'd gotten a lot of flack for doing that at like Wimbledon or something too. And now she's like on the biggest stage in the world. And it's kind of a big middle finger. So I thought it was amazing.
Didn't like it.
Yeah, well,
there.
you know.
Yeah, just kidding. Mike, did you like it?
I did. So I'm not the hugest Kendrick fan. I just find it a little impenetrable. You have to sit down and really focus and start taking notes if you're really going to appreciate him for all he's worth.
You think?
I'm just
like he's my favorite rapper.
I mean, he's great.
That's fine. Yeah.
I mean, he's got some very mainstream bangers that are very accessible, but like his most celebrated work, I mean, he's like a Pulitzer Prize winner for, I think, To Pimp a Butterfly. He's awesome. I just don't find it the kind of music I return to like daily. It's not like a fun listening experience to me per se, but I think he's really important. I think he's an incredibly important and even like a unifying force in regards to where he comes from. I liked, like you were talking about the Crips and the Bloods. There's a lot of like red and blue symbolism happening in halftime and kind of bringing everyone together. I'm not an expert, but yeah, I enjoyed it. I thought it was very worthy of the biggest stage in America.
I was having a real hard time deciding if I liked his outfit. His jeans were like
the bell bottoms,
distracting.
The jeans,
so awesome.
Yeah, like that felt like Mike after like a trip to the thrift store for the next week.
Hell yeah.
I saw this tweet because he was like obviously just slamming Drake when he played that song and everything. And there's this tweet that was like, what if you got this destroyed in a beef by someone that looks like a little cutie patootie in flared jeans? Yeah. Anyway, I thought it was great. Yeah. We're just going to do a couple subscriber questions today. So the first one is going to be from Brendan. He says, I just saw the new Jurassic World Rebirth trailer. I thought it was interesting. Would love to hear y'all's impressions about it. You guys saw that trailer, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. You know what? I'm in. I'm going to give it a chance.
Sure.
I'm going to give it a chance. My excitement level definitely went down
Yeah.
when there's like mutant dinosaurs and a lot of CG. It looked like a lot of green screen, but I'm excited still. I
And
can't
it feels
not
like
be excited.
there's like a little girl as part of the group.
Yeah.
And
Stop
you just
bringing
know
kids
that
to these
like,
islands.
she's going to do some like brave things and make it out.
Right.
There's like a little part of me that thinks like maybe they'll have the kid get eaten. And I'm hoping.
You got to make one of these movies where the kid just gets torn apart by a velociraptor.
In like
first
the
10
Lost
minutes.
World, that was the best part, was the kid getting caught by all the compies, you know?
Yeah. Mike?
It felt
What do you
very
think?
paint by the numbers to me. The fact that Scarlett Johansson was so excited to be in it gets me excited, because at least we know we're going to get one fun performance out of it. Probably Mahershala Ali is going to deliver another fun performance. I don't know.
Yeah.
It just felt like, here's the nerdy scientist, here's the hot
Yeah.
girl, here's the bad guy who's obviously bad and chewing. I don't know. It could be fun. It could be great, but I'm not holding my breath exactly
Yeah.
for it.
It was written by the writer that did the original movie, Gareth Edwards, great director, directed Rogue One, one of the Godzilla movies, and his cinematographer is really good too. I forget his name, but so I do think there's some pieces that could make it good, but we'll see. All right. This one's from Ruby. Ruby says, describe a scar you have and how you got it. I'll give you guys a second to think, because I knew this question already. But I've got one on my hand that's on the top of my right palm and then on my middle finger. And it was in high school. I was in this class called leisure sports, but one of those sports was lining up on opposite ends of an ice skating rink, skating at each other as fast as we could, and whoever was left standing won. And it was the rugby coach that taught this class. And I fell and someone ice skated over my hand and shaved all the top of the skin off my top of my hand, and then cut my middle finger wide open and cut all the tendons. And I had to wear a cast for a while after that.
You kept getting like mad too, because you had your middle finger in a cast and like everyone was saying you're flipping people off.
Everyone made that joke to me because my middle finger was extended all the time. Yeah.
It's not a very leisurely activity, in my honest opinion.
We didn't do many leisure sports in that class. They all turned into full contact sports.
I had a finger one, but since you did that and yours was worse. You know what one I find interesting is my eye right here.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was like 2 or 3, our oldest brother Cyrus, we were just like playing and he pushed me into a couch and a spring cut me like right on the eye. But what's interesting to me about it is that I kind of didn't know I had it until like 4 years ago, and someone was like, what's that scar on your eye? And then I had to like ask my mom, and she was like, yeah, Cyrus pushed you into a couch.
Yeah, I don't think I'd ever heard that story. That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
It's cool he did that.
Yeah, I'd like face scars, you know? I think
We'll
face
see
scars
if we
are
can
cool.
It's too bad it didn't
recreate
do
that
that
one.
little perfect one through your eyebrow and across your
Like
eye.
Zorro.
that
That'd
would
be
Yeah,
so
or a
cool.
scar.
Man.
Yeah.
And you just never open your eye.
Yeah.
I have a scar on my knee from when my brother Nate and I were just playing football out in front of our house on the street. And I fell, and a sharp rock jabbed like right underneath the, the patella. And that one's just memorable to me because it really hurt and I was crying, but I was really surprised to look up and see my brother Nate, who's like, he's like the tough guy, the big guy. And we were maybe 6 and 8 at the time, maybe even younger, but he was crying maybe even harder than I was. And he was so worried for me. And he like kind of helped me back to the house, and he explained to my parents what happened. It was just like a really touching moment. And I don't have a lot of those memories with Nate. Like, I know he loves me and he loves us, but he doesn't very emotionally express himself that way very much. So
Yeah.
it's just a good memory to have that, when things get tough, he's going to be there.
I wish my brothers had done that for me at least once.
Cried over you?
Yeah.
I definitely did at some point. I'm trying to think, though. I don't know. A bald eagle's flying by right now.
Or just like shown me once, like, you know what, we care about this guy.
Jeff, I did that all the time. All right. Okay, we're just going to do those 2 questions for now. We're going to wrap this up. Thanks for listening, guys. Juliane, thanks for, surviving and telling your story. What an incredible story. What an incredible woman. And to this day is making big changes for conservation, for biodiversity. So
She's
someone
still
I
alive?
definitely look up to. Still alive. Yeah.
Let's go visit her.
Nice.
All right. We'll have to have Werner Herzog with us.
I'd like to shake her maggot-riddled hand.
Yeah.
They probably removed those by now.
I think they're gone. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks, guys. We love you. If you want more content, check out our Patreon or our Apple Grizz Club. We're always putting out bonus episodes there. They're really fun. We have a good time over there. And
also, check us out on YouTube. We don't do this very often. We don't talk about it, but we are posting every main episode there, and it's growing. It's been pretty fun to see a little community over there build. So if you're interested in seeing what we look like, it's a good place to do it.
Oh, actually, Wes, give me 1 second.
Okay. 1. All right. We'll talk to you guys later.
Pwned, Jeff. 1 second, he got you.
I got him.
Owned.
That's pretty much as bad as Kendrick and Drake. How bad I just got Jeff.
Where is it?
Can never show his face again. Dude, we're at like 30 seconds.
As promised too. So a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts.
Yeah. We did say that
that's
we would
right.
read one. Yeah.
My 3-year-old has an ocean animals puzzle that comes in a shark-shaped box. If I had to compare Wes to a cardboard box, that would definitely be it. This is my top 5 podcasts of all time. Wes, Jeff, and Mike are smart, funny, silly, and thoughtful. We don't need to read the rest, but you're a shark puzzle box.
That's
5
great.
stars.
Thank you, everyone, for your very kind reviews comparing me to boxes.
Yeah,
it was
we'll
really
do a
funny.
couple more 5-star reads of Wes as an inanimate object.
Yeah, it was very nice to read. Just so you know, we don't take negative reviews that personally. I was okay, but it was nice to hear from people that really like us and that compared me to boxes. So appreciate it. All right. Love you guys.
Love you guys.
Bye.
See ya.